My name is Mia, I'm 28 years old, and my life changed with a single phone call. You're not invited to the housewarming until you apologize to your sister, my mom said. Her voice was cold like ice. I could hear laughter in the background. It was my dad and my sister, Kayla. They were all so sure I would break. They were sure I would cave, just like I always did. What they didn't know was that their perfect daughter, the one they were celebrating, was living a lie. They didn't know that I had been secretly paying every single dime of my sister's mortgage for the past year, and when I finally decided I had had enough, their perfect little celebration crumbled into dust. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. In my family, there were two roles. My younger sister, Kayla, was born to be the star. She was the project, the masterpiece, the one who required all the attention and energy. My role was to be the audience, the stagehand, and the quiet benefactor who funded the show. It took me 28 years to realize I didn't have to play that part anymore. Kayla was the golden child from the moment she took her first breath. She was a beautiful baby, and as a toddler, her blonde curls and wide blue eyes could charm anyone into forgiving her for anything. I was 2 years older, a quiet, serious child with plain brown hair. The family photo albums tell the whole story. There are dozens of pictures of Kayla mid-laugh, smearing cake on her face, or dressed in a frilly tutu. The few pictures of me show a little girl standing slightly off to the side, watching. This dynamic became the blueprint for our entire lives. When Kayla was 5, she took my mom's most expensive lipstick and drew a mural on the living room wall. When my mom found it, she gasped, but then she knelt down, a smile playing on her lips. "Oh, Kayla," she said, her voice full of wonder. "You're such an artist." She took a picture of it before she cleaned it up. 2 weeks later, I accidentally spilled a glass of juice on the carpet. My mom's reaction was sharp and immediate. "Mia, look at this mess. You need to be more careful. Go to your room." There was no wonder in her voice, only annoyance. I was expected to be careful. Kayla was expected to be brilliant. Our school years were a masterclass in this double standard. I brought home perfect report cards, straight A's that I worked tirelessly for. My dad would look at the sheet, give a single nod, and say, "Good job, Mia. Keep it up." It felt like he was reviewing a satisfactory business report. My success was expected. It was baseline. When Kayla brought home a report card with C's and D's, my parents would sit down with her at the kitchen table, their faces etched with concern and love. "School isn't for everyone," my dad would say gently. "Your talents lie elsewhere. You have a creative mind." They hired tutors for her, not to force her into getting A's, but to just get her to pass. Her struggle was a drama that required their full attention. While my quiet, consistent success happened in the background, unnoticed, I remember our joint birthday party when I turned 12 and she turned 10. The theme was whatever Kayla wanted, of course, a pop star party. I had wanted a murder mystery theme. On the day of the party, our backyard was filled with pink balloons and screaming kids. The pinnacle of the event was gift opening. Kayla went first. She tore open a huge box from my parents to reveal the karaoke machine she had been begging for. She shrieked with joy and immediately started singing off-key into the microphone. Everyone clapped. Then it was my turn. My gift was a small rectangular envelope. Inside was a savings bond. "This will be great for your college fund, Mia," my dad said, patting my shoulder. "You're the responsible one." I remember looking at that piece of paper, then looking at my sister singing and dancing, the center of everyone's world. I felt a familiar dull ache in my chest. It wasn't about the gift. It was about what it meant. Kayla got the fun. I got the responsibility. This followed us into high school. I joined the debate team and the mathletes. I took advanced placement classes. I was building my resume for college, already thinking 5 years ahead. Kayla joined the drama club. She was never the lead. She rarely bothered to learn all her lines, but she was always the one who got the most laughs. She had a natural charisma that people were drawn to. One year, she was cast as a tree in the school play. During the most dramatic scene, she tripped over her own roots and fell flat on her face. The audience burst out laughing, completely ruining the moment. The lead actress was furious. But my parents, when they recounted the story later, were practically crying with laughter. "Oh, that's just our Kayla," my mom said, wiping a tear from her eye. "She stole the show without even trying." They didn't mention my debate trophy from that same week. Getting a job was another point of divergence. At 16, I started working at a local pharmacy, stocking shelves and running the cash register. I saved nearly every penny. I was saving up for a used car so my parents wouldn't have to drive me everywhere. They praised my work ethic but made it clear that the car was my own responsibility. Kayla, on the other hand, was deemed too sensitive for the rigors of a part-time job. She needs to focus on her art, my mom would say, as if Kayla was a professional painter and not just a teenager who occasionally doodled in a sketchbook. When she finally did get a job at a clothing boutique, she lasted 3 weeks before quitting in a storm of tears because her manager had asked her to refold a table of sweaters. My parents were outraged on her behalf. That woman was a tyrant, my dad declared. She was stifling Kayla's spirit. The college years were the loneliest of my life. I went to the state university 2 hours away. I had a partial academic scholarship, but I still had to work constantly to cover the rest. I was a waitress, a library assistant, a tutor. There were nights I'd fall into bed, my legs aching and my mind numb from studying, and I would feel an overwhelming sense of isolation. I was completely on my own. My parents rarely called, and when they did, the conversation was brief and superficial. Meanwhile, they were pouring all their emotional and financial resources into Kayla. She had enrolled in a private arts college 3 states away, at triple the cost of my school, to major in photography. She called them every day, homesick and overwhelmed. They sent her lavish care packages filled with gourmet snacks and art supplies. They drove out to visit her several times a semester. One semester, my main textbook for a required finance course cost $300. It was an expense I hadn't budgeted for, and I was completely broke. Swallowing my pride, I called home. I explained the situation to my dad, my voice small and embarrassed. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Well, Mia," he finally said, his voice sounding strained, "you'll have to figure it out. Maybe you can get a used copy or work a few extra shifts. You know, all our extra money is going to Kayla's tuition right now. Her pottery supplies alone are a fortune. Figure it out." That was the story of my life. I ended up having to borrow the money from a friend, a kindness that made me feel both grateful and deeply ashamed. A week later, I saw a photo my mom posted online of a beautiful, expensive-looking camera. The caption read, "A little surprise for our brilliant photographer. Keep chasing your dreams, Kayla." They couldn't help me with a textbook, but they could buy her a professional-grade camera she didn't need. Kayla, predictably, dropped out of college after 2 years. She came home with no degree, no job, and no plan. But in my parents' eyes, she hadn't failed. She had bravely decided that institutional learning wasn't for her. They celebrated her return. I came home for Christmas that year, a Dean's List student with a clear career path, and all anyone could talk about was Kayla's exciting new plan to freelance. I graduated and moved to the city to start my career as a financial analyst. The work was grueling, but I was good at it. I was methodical, detail-oriented, and responsible. All the traits my childhood had forged in me. I was finally independent. I paid my own rent, my own bills, and I started, for the first time in my life, to build something that was truly mine, a savings account. It was my secret pride, a tangible result of my hard work. Kayla floated. She tried selling jewelry on the internet. She tried starting a dog walking business. Nothing ever stuck. She lived at home, rent-free, a permanent resident in her childhood bedroom. My parents called her a free spirit. They called me the serious one. I was the steady, reliable background character in the vibrant, chaotic movie of Kayla's life. And for so long, I accepted it. It was easier than fighting. I thought that my quiet competence was a form of strength. I thought that by being the anchor, I was helping my family. I didn't realize I wasn't an anchor. I was just a doormat. And the biggest test of that was yet to come. The campaign for the down payment began on a Tuesday. It started with a frantic, breathless phone call from Kayla. She had found her dream house. Not just a house she liked, but the house. It was, in her telling, a place of almost mythical perfection. A 1920s craftsman bungalow with a wraparound porch, a clawfoot bathtub, and a garden perfect for her rescue dog. 'Cause it was the one thing, she claimed, that would give her life meaning and direction. There was, of course, the small matter of reality. She had no savings to speak of, a credit score in the gutter, and a patchy employment history that made mortgage lenders laugh. "But the owner accepted my offer, Mia," she cried into the phone, her voice thick with manufactured desperation. "He's an old man who likes my vibe, but the bank won't approve the loan without a $40,000 down payment. Can you believe it? 40,000? I felt my blood run cold. $40,000. That was my number. It was the exact amount I had spent 5 years meticulously saving. It was my escape hatch, my security, my proof that all my hard work had been worth it. It was my own dream of a small condo, a place of peace away from all the family drama. "Kayla, that's impossible," I said, my voice firm. "That's my entire savings. I can't just give it to you." I'm not asking you to give it to me, she insisted, a sob catching in her throat. It's a loan. I'll pay you back, I swear on Gus's life. This will be the thing that makes me get serious. I'll get a real job, I'll budget, I'll make you proud. Please, Mia, you're my only hope. I said no. I was firm. I explained that it was my emergency fund, my future. I ended the call feeling anxious but resolute. That resolution lasted less than 24 hours. The next day, the texts began. A flood of them. Photos of the house with captions like, "Imagine Gus playing in this yard." Then came the guilt. "I guess my dreams don't matter." And finally, the emotional blackmail. "I can't believe my own sister won't help me. I thought you loved me." I ignored them, my stomach twisting with each notification. The day after that, my mom called. Her voice was syrupy with disappointment. "Mia, I'm so worried about your sister," she began. "She's absolutely shattered. She told me you refused to help her with the house. Honey, that's not what family does. We support each other's dreams. You're so good with money, it's just sitting in a bank. This is your sister's entire happiness we're talking about." "Mom, it's my life savings," I argued, my voice pleading. "I worked for 5 years for that money. It's for my future." "Don't be so selfish, Mia," she snapped, the sweetness vanishing from her voice. "It's just money. It comes and goes. Kayla has a chance to build a real life for herself, and you're standing in her way because you're hoarding your savings. I'm very disappointed in you." She hung up. The word selfish echoed in my ears. Me, who had never asked them for anything, was selfish. Then came the final blow. My dad. He called that evening. His tone was grave and solemn, as if he were discussing a medical diagnosis. "Mia, your mother and I are concerned about Kayla's mental state," he said. "She's so fragile. Losing this house could send her into a real depression. We're worried she might do something. This house has given her hope. We'd mortgage our own house to help her, but our money is all tied up. You're the only one who can do this. Don't take her hope away." They had me cornered. They had successfully framed my financial responsibility as selfishness and my sister's financial irresponsibility as a fragile dream they needed to protect. They made me feel like a cruel, heartless monster. I spent that night staring at my ceiling, the weight of their expectations crushing me. I pulled up a spreadsheet, my go-to comfort in times of stress. I ran the numbers. There was no realistic scenario in which Kayla, with her current earning potential and spending habits, could ever pay me back. It was a gift, not a loan, no matter what they called it. My practical mind knew it was a catastrophic mistake, but my heart, so starved for their approval, so desperate to be seen as a good daughter, was wavering. The next evening, my doorbell rang. It was Kayla. Her eyes were red and puffy. She stood on my doormat looking like a tragic heroine from a Victorian novel. She didn't even say hello. She just launched into her final devastating performance. "I know you think I'm a mess, Mia," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I know I haven't always made the best choices, but this house, it's different. It feels like a home. It feels like a place where I could finally be the person everyone wants me to be. The person you want me to be. Please, don't take that away from me." She pulled out her phone and started swiping through photos of the house again, her voice narrating a fantasy life. "This is where I'll put my easel. And we can have family dinners on this porch. You can come over all the time. We'll be real sisters." It was the "we'll be real sisters" that broke me. It was a promise of everything I had ever wanted. Connection, closeness, a family where I was a valued member and not just a functionary. It was a lie, of course, but it was a beautiful one. I let her in. I sat her down. I pulled out the loan agreement I had printed, a pathetic attempt to maintain some semblance of control. She signed it without a glance, her tears miraculously drying up. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "You saved my life, Mia. You're the best sister in the world!" The next day, I sat at my computer. For hours, I just stared at my online banking portal. The number 40,426.34 seemed to glow on the screen. It represented every early morning, every late night, every skipped vacation, every lonely meal of leftovers. It was my freedom. I thought about Kayla's promises. I thought about my mother's disappointment and my father's worry. I felt like I was standing on a cliff, and my entire family was on the other side, beckoning me to jump, promising they would catch me. My hand trembled as I typed in Kayla's account number and the transfer amount. I clicked confirm. The page reloaded. My balance was now $126.34. A feeling of profound emptiness washed over me. It was done. 5 years of my life, gone in a single click. My phone buzzed almost instantly. It was a text from Kayla. "OMG, you did it. Tissam, you're the best. Gotta go call the realtor. There was no sense of the gravity of what I had just done. To her, it was just a transaction, like I had spotted her for lunch. The celebration dinner a few weeks later was exactly as I'd imagined. My parents toasted Kayla. To our daughter, the homeowner. My aunt turned to her and said, "It's so wonderful you were able to do this all on your own, sweetheart." Kayla just smiled demurely and said, "I had a little help." She glanced at me for a fraction of a second. A little help. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand on the table and show them all my bank statement, but I didn't. I just sat there sipping my water, the good, responsible, quiet daughter. I had bought my family's happiness. The price was just my own. The illusion that my $40,000 sacrifice was a one-time loan shattered within 3 months. The first payment on the repayment schedule I had so carefully drafted came and went with no mention from Kayla. When I finally worked up the courage to text her about it, her reply was swift and dismissive. "OMG, Mia, are you serious? I'm totally broke from moving! All the new furniture and stuff. Can we just start next month?" Next month never came. Instead, what came was the first of many emergency phone calls. I was at my desk, deep into a quarterly report, when my phone rang. It was Kayla, her voice a high-pitched squeal of panic. "Mia, you have to help me. The mortgage is due tomorrow and I'm a little short. It's $2,300. I just had some unexpected expenses. Please, can you cover it for me? Just this once. I'll pay you back for everything as soon as I get my next big freelance project." There it was again. The promise. It was always a vague future event. The next project, the next job, the next magical windfall that would solve all her problems. My logical mind knew it was a fantasy, but I was in too deep. I had already invested my life savings into this project of propping Kayla up. What was another $2,000 to protect that investment? I felt a familiar sense of resignation. I was tired, I had a deadline, and I didn't have the emotional energy for the fight that would follow if I said no. I opened my banking app. The small cushion I had started to rebuild in my savings account vanished. I sent the money. Just this once, I told myself. A pathetic lie to get me through the day. But it wasn't just once. It became our new toxic routine. On the last day of every month, like clockwork, my phone would buzz with a text from Kayla. The excuses varied slightly. One month it was, car insurance was higher than I thought. The next it was, Gus had to go to the vet, but the request was always the same. "Can you send the mortgage money?" She stopped adding promises to pay me back. It was no longer a request for help. It was an expectation. I had become a line item in her budget, the one labeled free money from my sister. My own life began to shrink. My dream of buying a condo was completely dead. I was barely rebuilding any savings at all. My friends would talk about planning weekend getaways or buying tickets to a concert, and I would have to make excuses. "I'm swamped with work," I'd lie, the shame burning in my throat. The truth was, I couldn't afford a $100 concert ticket because I was paying a mortgage on a house I didn't live in. I ate cheap meals. I stopped buying new clothes. My world became smaller and grayer, consisting of my office, my small apartment, and the endless stress of managing my own finances while secretly bankrolling hers. Then the other bills started. It was a slow creep at first. A text with a photo of a letter from the Homeowners Association. "Can you believe these people? They want $500 for fees." It's such a scam. I knew that if she didn't pay it, they could put a lien on the house. The thought of the financial catastrophe that would cause, and how my parents would inevitably blame me for not preventing it, was enough to make me pay. I sent the money. A few months later, the text was a photo of a bright red shutoff notice from the electric company. Her message was infuriatingly casual. "Oops! Can you handle this?" Not a please. Not a thank you. I was no longer her savior. I was her administrative assistant. I found myself on the phone with the utility company, navigating their automated system, paying my sister's overdue bill with my credit card while I was on my lunch break at work. I felt a profound sense of humiliation. I was a successful financial analyst, and I was secretly managing the basic life responsibilities of my 25-year-old sister. The incident that should have been my breaking point was the car. She called me on a Friday afternoon, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mia, my car just made a horrible noise and now it won't start. I'm stranded. I had it towed to a mechanic and he said it needs a whole new transmission. It's going to be $2,000. How will I get to my job? I'll be fired." This felt different. It sounded like a genuine crisis. I felt a surge of sisterly concern. "Don't worry, Kayla," I said, my voice softening. "I'll transfer you the money. Just get it fixed." I sent the $2,000 immediately, feeling that familiar sickness as I watched my own account balance dwindle once again. The next evening, I was mindlessly scrolling through social media, and then I saw it. Kayla had posted a new photo. It was a close-up of her car's tire. The wheel was encased in a shiny, new, intricate-looking silver rim. It was flashy and obviously expensive. The caption read, "New shoes for my baby. Finally got the rims I've been dreaming of. Bling, treat yourself." I stared at the picture until my eyes burned. The truth hit me like a physical blow. There was no broken transmission. There had been no emergency. She had lied, crafting a dramatic story to squeeze another $2,000 out of me for a cosmetic upgrade for her car. I called her instantly. My voice was shaking with a rage I couldn't control. "The rims, Kayla? You told me you needed a new transmission." She was silent for a moment, and then came the gaslighting. "Oh, that," she said, her voice light and breezy. "It's so funny, the transmission was broken, but my friend knows a guy who fixed it for free. So I had all this extra money and I figured, why not? I deserved a little treat. Why are you so obsessed with how I spend my money, Mia? You're being weird." She called me weird for expecting her not to lie to my face and steal from me. The audacity of it left me speechless. I hung up the phone, my hands trembling. This was not help. This was not family. This was exploitation. Pure and simple. Meanwhile, my parents remained blissfully, willfully ignorant. They would call me to sing Kayla's praises. "We are just so proud of how well Kayla is managing," my mom told me one day, her voice overflowing with pride. "She's keeping that big house all by herself, paying her own bills. She's finally become such a responsible adult." Each word was a dagger. I wanted to scream the truth into the phone. "She's not paying for anything. I am. Your responsible adult daughter is a fraud, and you've enabled it your whole life." But I couldn't. The family dynamic was too entrenched. I knew what would happen. They wouldn't believe me. They would say I was jealous, that I was exaggerating. They would choose her fantasy over my reality. They always had, so I stayed silent. But something was curdling inside me. The quiet acceptance was turning into a hard, cold knot of resentment. I was no longer just a shadow. I was a ghost, haunting a life that wasn't mine, and I was starting to disappear completely. The end began at a Sunday dinner. These monthly gatherings at my parents' house had become exercises in self-control. I had mastered the art of the neutral expression, the non-committal nod, the polite, empty smile. My role was to sit quietly while the conversation, as always, orbited around Kayla, the sun of our family's solar system. That evening, the air was thick with her latest triumphs. She had planted a vegetable garden. She had adopted a second dog. She was thinking of taking up pottery again. My parents hung on her every word, their faces glowing with adoration. My dad refilled her wine glass twice before he even noticed mine was empty. My mom kept touching her arm, saying, "That's wonderful, sweetie," to even the most mundane statement. I sat there, methodically cutting my chicken into smaller and smaller pieces, feeling the familiar isolation descend upon me. Kayla, feeling the warmth of the spotlight, decided it was time for her grand reveal. "Oh, I almost forgot to show you guys my new present to myself," she said, her voice practically singing. She reached down and placed a handbag on the table with a theatrical flourish. It wasn't just any handbag. It was a designer purse I recognized instantly. It was made of buttery black leather, with a distinctive gold clasp that was the brand's signature. I knew exactly how much it cost, $850. I knew because I had once, in a moment of fantasy, put it in an online shopping cart before my practical side took over, and I closed the tab in horror. Seeing it now, sitting on my mother's floral tablecloth, felt like a personal insult. Just 48 hours earlier, I had received a panicked text from Kayla. "MIA, help! The water company is going to shut me off tomorrow. I need $300 ASAP!" I had been in the middle of a stressful meeting, but I had excused myself, gone to the restroom, and transferred the money from my phone, my heart pounding with anxiety on her behalf. Now looking at that purse, I felt a white-hot rage that was so intense it made my vision blur for a second. The $300 for the water bill had clearly been the last little bit she needed to buy this monument to her own selfishness. I just felt like I deserved a little treat, Kayla explained to my rapt parents. "I've been so responsible lately, budgeting and everything, and I got the most amazing deal on it." My mother reached out and stroked the leather as if it were a holy relic. "Oh, Kayla, it's absolutely stunning. You have such an eye for quality. You work hard, you deserve it," my dad added, echoing the same tired phrase he always used. The hypocrisy was suffocating. She didn't work hard. She didn't budget. She performed the idea of being a responsible adult, and my parents were her adoring audience, refusing to look behind the curtain. And I was the one working 70-hour weeks to fund the entire production. I tried to let it go. I really did. I bit the inside of my cheek, focusing on the sting. "Don't say anything. It's not worth it. It won't change anything. I repeated the words like a mantra in my head. But as Kayla launched into a story about the fancy brunch spot she'd gone to with her friends, a place I knew cost $100 a person, the mantra failed. The dam of my silence, which I had so carefully constructed over years, finally broke. I set my fork down with a quiet clink that sounded like a gunshot in the suddenly still room. I looked directly at my sister. My voice came out calm, almost detached, which scared me more than if I had screamed. "Kayla," I said, "that's a beautiful purse. How did you afford it?" I thought things were tight this month. The effect was instantaneous. Kayla's joyful expression collapsed into a mask of wounded disbelief. Her lower lip began to tremble. Tears welled in her eyes with a speed that could have won an award. "Why would you do that?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "Why do you always have to ruin everything? You're just jealous. You've been jealous of me my entire life." She shoved her chair back from the table, the legs scraping loudly against the wood floor, and fled the room, her sobs echoing down the hallway. Before I could even take a breath, my parents turned on me. My mother's face was contorted with anger. "What is wrong with you, Mia?" That was a cruel, horrible thing to say. "You know how sensitive she is." "I just asked a simple question," I said, my voice shaking now. "She told me she couldn't pay her water bill. She's flaunting an $800 purse. It's a valid question. It is none of your business." My dad's voice boomed, his fist hitting the table. "You are obsessed with money, Mia. It's all you think about. Your sister has an artist's soul. She doesn't see the world in dollars and cents like you do. You're being cold and you're being cruel. This was my chance." The truth was right there, waiting. "It's my business because it's my money," I said, my voice rising. "I'm the one who paid her water bill. I'm the one who pays her mortgage every single month. That purse was bought with my money." I looked from my mother's face to my father's, expecting, I don't know what, shock, understanding, a glimmer of apology. What I got was worse. Disbelief and dismissal. My mother shook her head, a look of pity on her face. "Oh, Mia, don't be so dramatic. Don't make up lies just to make your sister look bad. It's unbecoming." "You're exaggerating," my dad said, waving his hand as if swatting away a fly. "I'm sure you've helped her out once or twice. That's what family does. But Kayla is handling her own affairs. She told us so herself. They didn't believe me. Or rather, they chose not to. Believing me would mean their perfect image of Kayla would be shattered. It would mean they had been wrong, that they had been blind. It was easier to believe I was a jealous, lying, money-obsessed monster. It fit the narrative they had written for me years ago. My mother stood up. "I'm going to go check on your sister. And when I get back, you are going to apologize to her for this disgusting display." I watched her walk out of the room. I was left alone at the table with my father, who wouldn't even look at me. He just sat there, shaking his head in disappointment. In that moment, surrounded by the remnants of our family dinner, I had never felt so utterly alone. They had made their choice. They would always choose the beautiful, comfortable lie over the hard, messy truth. They would always choose her. Something inside me went cold and quiet. The anger, the hurt, the desperate need for their approval, it all just vanished, replaced by a strange and sudden clarity. I finally understood. You cannot win a game that is rigged. You cannot get blood from a stone. And you cannot expect people who have benefited from your silence to thank you for speaking the truth. I stood up. "Where do you think you're going?" my father demanded. "You need to go upstairs and apologize to Kayla." I looked at my father, really looked at him, for the first time not as a daughter seeking approval, but as an adult seeing another adult for who he truly was. And I felt nothing but a profound, empty sadness. "I'm going home," I said quietly. And for the first time I walked away, leaving them to clean up the mess. The mess they had made. The drive home from that disastrous Sunday dinner was eerily quiet. I didn't play music. I didn't cry. The rage that had flashed so brightly at the dinner table had burned out, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. It felt as if I had been living in a fog my entire life, and a harsh wind had finally blown it all away. I saw the landscape of my family for what it was. A place where I was not valued, only used. The pain was still there, a deep, resonant ache, but it was no longer confusing. It was simple. It was the truth. I got into my apartment and the silence was a comfort. I made myself a cup of tea and sat on my couch, looking out at the city lights. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt free. The desperate, lifelong struggle for my parents' approval, the endless, draining effort to be seen by them. It was over. They had made it clear that they would never see me. They would only ever see what they wanted to see. Their perfect, fragile daughter, Kayla, and me, her ever-reliable support system. In their refusal to believe the truth, they had given me an unintended gift. They had severed the puppet strings. The week that followed was one of the most peaceful I had experienced in years. My phone remained silent. No texts from Kayla with a new manufactured crisis. No calls from my mother, full of passive-aggressive questions. It was a week of blessed nothingness. For the first time, I realized how much of my mental and emotional energy was consumed by them, by anticipating their needs and managing their drama. Without that constant buzz of anxiety, my world felt calmer, more spacious. I went to work and was more focused and productive than I had been in months. I left the office at a reasonable hour. I reconnected with a friend I'd been putting off, and we had dinner and laughed for hours. I felt like I was breathing again after being underwater for a very long time. A small, naive part of me expected a phone call of apology. I imagined my mother calling, saying, "Mia, we've thought about what you said and we're so sorry." I knew it was a fantasy, but the hope flickered faintly. I had told them the truth after all. Surely, in the quiet of their own home, away from Kayla's theatrics, the facts must have sunk in. The phone call finally came on Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after the dinner. It was my mother. The flicker of hope died the moment I heard her voice. It was not warm or apologetic. It was the voice of a general issuing orders. "Mia," she said without any preamble. "I'm calling about Kayla's housewarming party tonight. We haven't heard from you all week." There was an accusation in her tone, as if my silence was an act of aggression. "There hasn't been anything to say," I replied calmly. "Well?" "I'm calling because we need to resolve this," she continued, her voice sharp. "The party is in a few hours, and this ridiculous drama needs to end. We are a family. We expect you to be there. We assume you've had time to think about your behavior and are ready to apologize to your sister." I was stunned into silence for a moment. They had spent a week not reflecting on the truth, but reinforcing their own narrative. In their version of events, I was the one who had misbehaved. I was the one who needed to atone. The idea that they had done anything wrong had clearly never entered their minds. "I have nothing to apologize for, Mom," I said, my voice quiet but firm. I told the truth. There was a huff of exasperation on the other end of the line. "Oh, Mia, stop it. You embarrassed your sister and you made wild, hurtful accusations. You ruined what should have been a lovely family dinner. Now, are you going to apologize and come to the party? Or are you going to continue being selfish?" The word selfish struck me again. It was their favorite weapon, but this time it didn't hurt. It was meaningless. "I won't be apologizing," I said. "And I won't be coming to the party." The silence that followed was glacial. I could feel the temperature dropping through the phone. When she spoke again, her voice was dripping with ice. "Fine," she said, "if that's how you want it. But let me be very clear. You are not invited to the housewarming. You are not to come anywhere near this house or this family until you are ready to sincerely apologize and make things right with Kayla. You are choosing to put yourself on the outside. Mia, I hope you understand that." She hung up. I stood in my kitchen, the phone still in my hand. Banned. I was banned from the housewarming. The housewarming for the house I was paying for. The sheer staggering absurdity of it washed over me. It wasn't even anger I felt. It was a kind of profound, clarifying awe at the depth of their delusion. They were celebrating a lie. A big, beautiful, expensive lie with a wraparound porch. And I, the silent, invisible author of that lie, was being cast out for daring to speak a single sentence of truth. I thought about my whole life. I thought about the broken glass bird, where my possession was destroyed but Kayla's feelings were the priority. I thought about the savings bond, where my future was a responsibility while her present was a celebration. I thought about the college textbook, where my need was an inconvenience while her whim was an essential expense. It was all the same story, told over and over again in different ways. My role was to provide, to support, to be responsible. But I was not allowed to be a person. I was not allowed to have feelings, or boundaries, or a voice. The moment I tried to have one, I was punished. I was exiled. They weren't just ignoring me anymore. They were actively erasing me. By banning me, they were removing the one person who knew the truth, ensuring their perfect fantasy could proceed uninterrupted. I sank onto a kitchen chair. For a long time, I just sat there. I wasn't crying. I was thinking. I finally understood that I was not losing a family, because the family I had been desperately trying to earn my place in had never really existed. It was an illusion, and the only power they had over me was the power I gave them. My need for their approval, my fear of their disappointment, my money. That night, as they were laughing, drinking champagne, and celebrating Kayla in the house that I paid for, I made a decision. I was not on the outside. I had never been on the inside. I was in a cage they had built for me, a cage of obligation and guilt, and I had just been handed the key. It was time to let myself out. That Saturday night, while the housewarming party was in full swing, I didn't sit at home and mourn the family I didn't have. The time for sadness was over. It had been replaced by a cold, quiet, and incredibly focused resolve. I was a financial analyst. My world was one of numbers, data, and irrefutable facts. My family had shown me that they were immune to emotional appeals and spoken truths. So, I decided to speak to them in the only language I was sure I could make them understand. I was going to give them a full accounting. I turned on my desk lamp, the single pool of light pushing back the darkness in my apartment. The silence felt purposeful. I logged into my online banking portal, the website I usually associated with stress and dwindling funds. Tonight, it felt like an arsenal. The idea had formed slowly, but now it was crystal clear. I was going to build a case. I was going to create a physical object that told the story of the last 2 years. A story that could not be dismissed as a lie or an exaggeration. I started with the big one, the down payment. I navigated to the transaction history from 2 years ago. I scrolled back through months of my own responsible spending, rent, utilities, groceries, until I found it. There it was, a single wire transfer, $40,000, sent from my savings account directly to the escrow company for the purchase of Kayla's house. I clicked print statement, the printer whirred to life, spitting out the first page of my evidence. I looked at the negative number on the page, and for the first time, I didn't feel the phantom pain of its loss. I felt the satisfying heft of a fact. Next, I went to my recurring transfers. For the past year, on the first of every month, there was a transfer of $2,300 to Kayla's checking account. I printed every single one. 12 pages, one for each month of her unearned security. As each sheet emerged from the printer, I remembered the context of the payment. The March payment was the one that had made me cancel a dentist appointment because I couldn't afford the copay. The July payment was the one I'd sent while my friends were on a beach trip I couldn't join. The November payment was the reason I had told my boss I couldn't contribute to the office holiday gift exchange. Each printed page was a ghost of a sacrifice I had made, a small piece of my life I had given away. Then I dove into the chaos of the miscellaneous crises. I used the search function on my account, typing in Kayla's name. The list that populated was staggering. I had forgotten some of them. There was the $500 for the HOA fees. There was the $300 for the water bill just last week. There were smaller amounts, $150 here, $200 there, for groceries or gas to get to work. Each one had come with a story of desperation, a tiny drama that only my money could solve. And then I found the big one, the $2,000 transfer from 3 months ago, the one for the broken transmission. I printed that statement, the memory of her lie feeling as fresh and sharp as a paper cut. I went onto my social media, found her post with the picture of the new rims, and printed a screenshot of that too. I would let the evidence speak for itself. For hours I worked. I was meticulous. I highlighted the key transactions on each page with a yellow marker. The pile of paper on my desk grew steadily. It was a monument to my own invisibility. All of this financial lifeblood had flowed from me to her, silently, and no one had ever seen it. But they were going to see it now. The next morning, I went to an office supply store. I walked the aisles with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I bought a thick black 3-inch binder. I bought a pack of clear plastic sheet protectors. I bought a set of tabbed dividers. I bought a label maker. Back at my apartment, I assembled it. It felt like I was preparing for the most important presentation of my career. I slid each printed statement into a sheet protector, the crinkle of the plastic sounding crisp and final. I organized them chronologically. I created sections with the label maker. The first tab read, Down Payment. The second, Monthly Mortgage Subsidy. The third, Utilities and HOA. The fourth, and my personal favorite, Miscellaneous and Exaggerated Crises. I placed the screenshot of the car rims right behind the bank statement for the $2,000 transfer. When it was all done, I held the binder in my hands. It was heavy. It was thick with the weight of my work, my sacrifices, my silence. This was my voice in paper and ink. On the spine of the binder, I printed one final label in big, bold letters, The House Maya Built. There was only one thing left to do. I sat back down at my desk and logged into my bank account one last time. I navigated to the scheduled payments section. There it was, sitting at the top of the list. A pending transfer for $2,300 to Kayla, scheduled for the first of the upcoming month. For a year, that pending payment had been a symbol of my entrapment. It was the monthly dread, the recurring sacrifice. My mouse hovered over the small button next to it. The button said delete. I thought about Kayla, probably still giddy from her party. I thought about my parents, so smug in their righteousness, so comfortable in their lies. I thought about their shock when the money that had always magically appeared suddenly stopped. I clicked the button. A small box popped up. "Are you sure you want to delete this scheduled transfer?" A slow smile spread across my face. "Yes," I whispered to the empty room. "I am sure." I clicked confirm. The page refreshed. The scheduled payment was gone. A wave of profound, absolute relief washed over me. It was more than just stopping a payment. It was cutting the cord. It was resigning from the job of being my family's safety net. It was the end of my silence. The binder sat on my desk, a dormant volcano. I didn't know when it would erupt, but I knew I was no longer afraid of the explosion. I was ready for it. The 2 weeks that followed the creation of the binder were the quietest of my adult life. It was the calm before the inevitable storm, but for the first time I wasn't afraid of the weather. The absence of my family's constant, low-grade chaos was like a weight lifted from my shoulders. I woke up in the morning and my first thought wasn't about them. It was about my day, my work, my life. It was a revelation. I used the time to recalibrate. I created a new budget for myself, one that didn't have a multi-thousand-dollar black hole labeled Kayla. The amount of disposable income I suddenly had was shocking. It felt like I had given myself a massive raise. On a whim, I bought the concert ticket my friend had mentioned weeks ago. I bought a new pair of running shoes without agonizing over the expense. These were small things, but they felt monumental. They were acts of putting myself first, a muscle I was just learning to flex. I knew the storm would hit around the middle of the month. The mortgage payment was due on the 1st, but there was usually a grace period until the 15th. I imagined the sequence of events. Kayla, not seeing the $2,300 appear in her account, would probably assume it was a glitch or that I was running late. She was so used to the money simply materializing that it wouldn't occur to her that it had been a deliberate choice. But around the 15th, the bank would officially register the payment as missed. They would charge a late fee, and they would call her. It happened on the 16th, a Tuesday. I was at work presenting a report in a team meeting. My phone, which I had set on the table, began to vibrate violently. I glanced down and saw Kayla's name flashing on the screen. She was calling again and again, one call ending and another immediately beginning. It was a digital tantrum. I calmly declined the call and put my phone on silent, turning my attention back to my presentation. A small, satisfied smile touched my lips. The storm had made landfall. When I got back to my desk an hour later, I had 17 missed calls and a string of frantic text messages. The first text read, "MIA, where are you? Pick up your phone." The second, "The bank called Mithi." Third, "They said the mortgage bounced." My payment was returned. Why the fourth? "You were supposed to pay it. You always pay it." And the final one, a string of furious, misspelled words. "This is your fault. They are charging me fees. You need to fix this now." The entitlement was breathtaking. There was no question, no concern, just pure, unadulterated rage that her personal ATM had malfunctioned. I took a moment, sipped my coffee, and decided to call her back. I wanted to hear her voice. I wanted the confrontation to be direct. I stepped into an empty conference room and dialed her number. She picked up on the first ring. "IA!" she shrieked, her voice a piercing combination of panic and fury. "What did you do?" "The bank said my mortgage payment was returned for insufficient funds. They charged me a $100 late fee. You have to call them and fix this right now. You need to send the money." I held the phone slightly away from my ear, waiting for her to run out of breath. When she finally paused, I spoke. My voice was unnervingly calm even to my own ears. It was the voice I used at work when dealing with a difficult client. "Hello, Kayla," I said. "I didn't do anything." "What are you talking about?" she screamed. "You were supposed to send the money for the mortgage. You forgot." "No," I said, my voice remaining level and cool. "I didn't forget. I just stopped. I'm not paying your mortgage anymore." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. I could practically hear the gears in her brain grinding, trying to process a concept that was completely foreign to her. "What? What do you mean you stopped?" she finally stammered. "You can't just stop. I don't have the money. You have to pay it." "No, Kayla, I don't," I replied, the truth of the statement feeling solid and powerful. "It's your house. It's your mortgage. It's your responsibility. I've been covering it for a year, but the arrangement no longer works for me." "The arrangement?" she shrieked, her voice rising in hysteria. "What arrangement?" "You were helping me. You're my sister. This is what you're supposed to do." I was invited to the housewarming party for the house I was paying for, Kayla. I was told I wasn't welcome. I decided to take that advice to heart. If I'm not welcome in the house, then my money isn't welcome either. From now on, you're on your own. Her fury collapsed into desperate, heaving sobs. It was the same manipulative crying she had used her entire life to get what she wanted. But for the first time, it had no effect on me. It was just noise. "You're ruining my life," she wailed. "I'm going to lose the house. This is all your fault. Mom and Dad are going to be so furious with you. You're tearing this family apart." I listened to her threats and accusations, and I felt nothing but a quiet, somber pity. She was 25 years old, and she had the emotional maturity of a toddler whose favorite toy had just been taken away. "The family was already torn, Kayla," I said softly. "You just didn't notice because you were on the winning side." I didn't wait for her response. I ended the call. I hung up the phone not with a feeling of angry triumph, but with the solemn finality of closing a book I had read one too many times. I already knew how it ended. I went back to my desk. My hands were perfectly steady. The storm had hit and I was still standing. The next wave would be my parents. I knew they were coming, and I was ready. It took less than 24 hours for the next wave to crash against my door. I was making dinner the following evening when I heard it. A furious, frantic banging that rattled the frame. It wasn't a polite knock. It was a demand. I knew exactly who it was. Kayla had called in the cavalry. I took a moment to turn off the stove. I smoothed down my shirt. I took a single, deep, calming breath. The binder was on my coffee table, right where I had left it. It was waiting. I walked to the door and opened it. My parents stood there, their faces flushed and distorted with rage. My father's jaw was clenched so tightly a muscle jumped in his cheek. My mother's eyes were narrowed into slits. They didn't wait for an invitation. They stormed past me into my apartment. "How could you?" My father bellowed, whirling around to face me. He didn't even bother to close the door. "How could you do this to your sister? Do you have any idea what you've done?" My mother was right behind him, her voice trembling with a fury that was somehow more chilling than his shouting. She called us hysterical. "The bank is threatening her. You put her at risk of losing her home. Her home! After everything we have done for you, this is how you repay us? By trying to ruin your own sister's life out of some petty jealousy?" They stood in the middle of my living room, two forces of nature, a hurricane of accusation and blame. For a moment, the old, familiar fear flickered inside me. The instinct to apologize, to make myself smaller, to absorb their anger and make it go away, was strong. It was a response that had been conditioned into me since childhood. But then I looked at the binder. I looked at that thick black book of facts, and the fear died. It was replaced by a resolve as hard and solid as steel. I calmly closed the apartment door and turned to face them. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't match their anger. "Please sit down," I said. "I will not sit down," my father roared. "I will stand here until you explain this cruel, selfish, childish behavior." "I will not explain anything until you sit down," I replied, my voice even. I pointed to the couch. "Sit. There is something you both need to see." Something in my tone must have surprised them. The sheer lack of hysteria, the absence of the defensive crying they were used to from me, seemed to throw them off balance. After a tense moment of hesitation, my mother, with a frustrated sigh, sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa. My father, still glaring, reluctantly followed suit. I walked to the coffee table. I picked up the binder. It felt heavy in my hands, heavy with the truth. I placed it on the table in front of them with a soft, definitive thud. "What is this?" my mother asked, her voice dripping with suspicion. "More of your spreadsheets?" "In a way," I said. I opened the binder to the first page, the one with the clear plastic sleeve holding the receipt for the $40,000 wire transfer. I turned it around so they could see. "This," I said quietly, "is the down payment for Kayla's house. The one you were so proud of her for saving up for. As you can see, it was transferred from my savings account. The one that took me 5 years to build." My father squinted at the paper. My mother leaned forward, her eyes scanning the details. A flicker of confusion crossed her face, but she quickly masked it. "You helped her a little. That's what family does." "A little?" I said. I flipped the page. "And the next. And the next. This is $2,300. Transferred on the 1st of last month for the mortgage. And this is $2,300 for the month before that. And the month before that." I continued to turn the pages, a steady rhythm of financial support. There are 12 of them, one for every month for the last year. I watched their faces as the reality began to dawn. The righteous anger was slowly, visibly draining away, replaced by a dawning, horrified understanding. My father's mouth hung slightly open. My mother's face had gone pale. I didn't stop. I flipped to the next section, the one labeled Utilities and HOA. This is the $500 payment to her homeowners association because she was about to have a lien put on the house. This is the payment to the electric company after she sent me a photo of her shut-off notice. This is the water bill, the one she couldn't pay 2 weeks ago because she was broke. I paused and then turned to the final, damning section, miscellaneous and exaggerated crises. I made sure the screenshot was clearly visible. And this, I said, pointing to the bank statement, is the $2,000 I sent her when she called me, crying, claiming her transmission was broken and she was stranded. And this, I said, tapping the adjacent page, is the photo she posted the very next day of the brand new luxury rims she bought with that money. The silence in the room was absolute. It was a heavy, suffocating silence, filled with the ghosts of 1,000 lies they had chosen to believe. They had no words. There was nothing to say. The data was clear. The facts were irrefutable. Their narrative, the one where Kayla was the plucky, independent homeowner and I was the cold, jealous sister, had been systematically, page by page, dismantled. I closed the binder. I looked at them. They looked like strangers to me. Two people who had been so blinded by favoritism that they had refused to see the truth that was right in front of them. My father looked old, his anger completely gone, replaced by a deep, hollow shame. My mother had her hand over her mouth, and her eyes were filled with a horror that was, for the first time, not directed at me. I let them sit in that silence for a long time. Then I spoke, my voice not filled with triumph or anger, but with the quiet finality of an ending. She didn't build that life, I said. I did. She wasn't standing on her own 2 feet. She was standing on me. You celebrated her independence while I was paying for it. You called me selfish and cruel for questioning it. You banned me from a housewarming for a house that I bought. I looked them both directly in the eye. You banned the wrong daughter. The aftermath of that confrontation was not loud or dramatic. It was a quiet, slow collapse. My parents left my apartment that night without another word. They looked defeated, broken by the weight of a truth they could no longer deny. As I had predicted, Kayla was completely incapable of supporting the life she had been pretending to live. Without my monthly infusions of cash, her world fell apart with astonishing speed. She missed a second mortgage payment, then a third. The foreclosure notices started arriving. The car with the luxury rims was repossessed. Within 6 months, she lost the house. The Craftsman bungalow, her perfect dream house, was sold at auction. The shame was public and profound. She had to move back into her childhood bedroom in my parents' house, surrounded by the remnants of a life built on lies. Our family, as I had known it, was fractured. My parents called me, their voices filled with a new, unfamiliar humility. They apologized. They said they were sorry, that they had been blind, but their apology felt hollow, like a bandage on a wound that went down to the bone. The trust was gone. The years of being unseen and unheard couldn't be erased by a few words of regret. I was polite but distant. There was nothing left to say. Meanwhile, I was finally living my own life. With my finances entirely my own, my savings grew at a speed that amazed me. The money I had been pouring into Kayla's fantasy life was now building my own reality. A year after that final confrontation, I walked into a bank and bought my own condo, a quiet, sunny place with a small balcony. I didn't need a mortgage. I paid for it in cash. The day I got the keys, I walked into the empty rooms, the smell of fresh paint filling the air. There were no ghosts here. No lies, no hidden sacrifices. Just peace. A peace I had built with my own 2 hands, with my own hard work. Family isn't supposed to exploit you and then exclude you. Real love doesn't demand your silence or your sacrifice as the price of admission. It took me 28 years to learn that, but it's a lesson I will never forget. If you've ever been used, ignored, or discarded by the people who were supposed to love you most, hit like, subscribe, and drop your story in the comments. Because sometimes the most powerful statement isn't shouting your truth, it's quietly walking through the front door of a home built entirely by your own hands.